We also need to add into the equation when we talk about Jill Stein that she has chosen a running mate for vice president who is a total extremist. If you regularly watch or listen to this show, you know this is not a show where I will cheerlead anything that has a supposedly progressive stamp on it. If you want a show like that, there are many shows like that. Okay, I don't even need to name them for you. You can find those. I am going to be completely upfront that when there is a critique I need to make of something that is supposedly progressive, I will make it. And Jill Stein has chosen Ajamu Baraka as her running mate for the presidency on the Green Party ticket. We've already talked about Jill Stein's anti-science views, the Green Party's pro-homeopathy views. Okay, fine. What about Ajamu Baraka? Well, he's written that President Obama and other members of the Black petite bourgeoisie are merely puppets, living proof that the white supremacist machine has hijacked the minds of Black people. Okay. Also wrote an article on his blog titled Paris Attacks and the White Lives Matter Movement, where he argues that France, Belgium, and other nations that have been affected by terrorism effectively got what they deserved, saying while the victims of the violence in Paris may have been innocent, France was not, he wrote, because the crimes committed against Arabs, Muslims, and Africans and the horrors of colonialism and the concerted effort by the French and US authorities to fund extremist groups in the Middle East are to blame for the woes of Western societies. According to Baraka, the Sanders campaign didn't offer a genuine program for radical change. I mean, we're talking about free education, government provided healthcare. That apparently was not radical enough because it was tacitly committed to Eurocentrism. And as he says, the Bernie Sanders campaign normalized white supremacy. He's written on his blog that Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad isn't a bad guy who was, after all, reelected by big margins, and that he is not engaged in any war crimes against his people, demonstrably untrue. He went on Kevin Barrett's Truth Jihad podcast, which is basically a 9/11 truther podcast, and said that some recent airline crashes were false flags, that the Democratic Party is white supremacist, and he is also saying that the U.S. is intentionally supporting ISIS. Now, we've talked about how weapons get to groups that the U.S. claims to oppose, but to flat out say the U.S. is flat out supporting ISIS is a bit further than most rational, clear thinkers are willing to go. If this is the liberal hero of the supposedly miraculous Green Party, Lewis, I want nothing to do with it. This is an extremist.
You would never think that he would be part of the Green Party in any way.
Right.
If you just, read what he was.
It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. Joining me today in our Baltimore studio is the Green Party Vice Presidential nominee, Ajamu Baraka. For 4 decades, he's fought for our human rights. He's also a contributor to the Black Agenda Report and Counterpunch. I thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So one of the key things that have unfolded this week is that the President Barack Obama's administration has signed a new MOU with Israel, guaranteeing it over $40 billion worth of aid over the next 10 years. Now, this is troubling for us because Israel is the greatest ally that the United States has in the Middle East, and given the current crisis in Syria, and of course, Palestine, this kind of endorsement of the government of Israel troubles many in the international community, not to mention right here in the United States. What do you make of this policy towards Israel?
It is quite bizarre. It is unjustifiable. And it's interesting that Mr. Obama will make some perfunctory comment about the two-state solution and pretending like they're concerned about trying to solve this ongoing horror of the Palestinian occupation, now going on for more than 67 years. There's no moral or political justification for the uncritical support given to the Israeli state by the Obama administration, especially since the government there appears to have no concern for the fundamental rights of Palestinians and no concern for any territorial integrity on the part of this so-called two-state with the continued rapid, aggressive expansion of Israeli settlements. So, where is the leverage if the U.S. state was really concerned about trying to finally solve this problem? When you decide you're going to give this state $40 billion. So this is a rouge. It's not serious. It is it demonstrates the contempt for the intelligence of the people of the U.S. That this charade will continue after all of these years.
And as the Green Party, what would your policy towards Israel be?
It would have, our policy would say very clearly that we have to have a resolution of this occupation that results in a settlement that respects and recognizes the rights of Palestinians to self-determination. It says that settlement expansion must halt immediately. It says that the occupation has to be dismantled. It says that there must be a pullback of those settlements if there's going to be viability in a two-state solution. And if there's resistance, then it becomes clear to everyone concerned that the only real solution is a one-state solution in which every person has equal rights, and there's no special positions based on any ethnic concerns or religious membership. So a secular state in which human rights become the grounding principles for how that state operates.
Now, one of the arguments that's been made is as long as the Syrian conflict is going on, the focus of the superpowers like the United States and Russia, not to mention the various parties involved in this proxy war, will be what's happening in Syria that allows Israel to continue to do what it is doing in the Golan Heights and in Palestine. How would you interfere or disrupt that kind of positioning on the part of Israel?
Well, again, Israel has its own set of own agenda. That agenda sometimes corresponds with the agenda of the U.S., but we know that they have their own agenda. What we say is that the conflict in Syria has to be resolved. We would use the power of the state to bring about some kind of national reconciliation of the war in Syria. I don't consider this to be a civil war myself. But the issue with Israel is that there are powerful forces in this country that still believe that Israel has a role to play in a support power for U.S. dominance in that region. And so the justification for continued support is that Israel is facing some kind of existential threat from its neighbors. But if you look at the configuration of forces now in the Middle East, so-called Middle East, one has to ask the question, threat from who? The Saudis have come on board and are vassals of the U.S. and have reconciled themselves to the existence of Israel and, in fact, collaborate with them on a number of issues. The Iraqi state, it doesn't have the ability to be of a threat to Israel.
to me, there should be no confusion about this for Americans. And I'll say this not just as a United States Senator, not just as a patriot who would die for my own country, but I'm going to say this as a Black man. When you're Black in America, you understand the vulnerability within your own country you love. I saw it as an adult on January 6th. The people that stormed the Capitol, talked to Capitol Police or African Americans. They had signs of hatred, Confederate flags, the vicious, racist things they were saying to Capitol Police officers. But side by side, those symbols of hate towards Black Americans were shirts like Camp Auschwitz shirts. Hate has an indiscriminate infection. This is why, as an American, as a Black American, I will always stand against hate and stand with the people who are targets of hate. Just like the Nazis, who didn't just destroy 6 million Jews, they destroyed gay people, gypsies. I will stand with people who are targets of hate. Hamas, like the Nazis and like ISIS, are people who target with hate. I stand with Jews. I stand with Muslims. I stand with gay folks. I stand with people right now who all have a common cause to stand against Hamas, because Hamas is an indiscriminately hateful people who do not want peace. They want to destroy others and stop us from having peace. This is not complicated, America. It is not complicated. We all must denounce hate and those people who use hate to destroy. That is Hamas. And so I am worried right now. I'm worried about rising anti-Semitism in the United States. I led with 3 other senators, bipartisan, to call for more resources, because hate is indiscriminate in its efforts. The same hate that killed Blacks in a church in South Carolina are the same people who are wielding the same hate that killed in a synagogue. And so we all need to take an understanding. Everyone has a responsibility to condemn the hatred of this ISIS Nazi like Hamas and do everything we can to try to get us back to peace, to affirming of human rights for all people in that region. And again, the protection of this country and this country's, unfortunately, too often targets of hate.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Nick and CJ Show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? It's great to be here. Welcome back. It's going to be another great week on RBN. We have a fantastic guest for you today, someone we respect a lot here at RBN. On Wednesday, Nick and I'll have Wyatt Reed as well. So,
wow, wow, that's a nice one.
So we're going to have a great week. And the very first Substack article I wrote, I'm thinking about writing a report on the Palestinian action I was at. I'm going to cover that a little bit later as well. But the first article I wrote was about these Negro imperialists, the Negro capitalists, how the Black community, especially in the establishment, essentially abandoned our Black revolutionary tradition. They abandoned the tradition of Malcolm X, MLK, Fred Hampton, for example, and embraced neoliberalism. They are our number one enemies in our community. The same way you see these Chinese Americans that go on CNN and tell the audience why we need to go to war with China. You know how the establishment recruits people from disenfranchised community, and then they use our struggle in order to justify imperialism. Cory Booker there is using Black struggle and the Black language in order to justify Israeli slaughter of the Palestinian people. Does it get more disgusting than that? You have 1,000 Palestinian children I saw this morning dead. But Cory Booker is going to justify that using the language of the Black struggle. Who's more evil than that? I'm asking you guys that question sincerely, but I want to bring our guest in. That's just my opening thoughts. CJ, feel free to chime in, but this is a good way to introduce our guest, someone who spoke and wrote a lot about this issue, an international human rights activist, organizer, amazing writer, national organizer for Black for Peace. Great to have you on, Ajamu Baraka. Thank you for making time.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. I really appreciate your inviting me back. and ready for this conversation, a very important one.
Yeah, I want to get your first reaction. I know you got a lot of questions.
Yes,
I'll
go
pass
ahead.
it to DJ. But I want your general reaction to that clip of Cory Booker and what I was speaking on as well regarding these shields for imperialism, these shields for the establishment known as the Black Congressional Caucus and their supporters. What's your general reaction to that clip? Thank you for joining once again.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, that's the nature of Cory Booker. Cory Booker is a particularly strange, but yet relatively consistent kind of Negro. He represents the kind of Negro leadership that has resulted from what Pascal Roberts refers to as the 50-year counter-revolution in the U.S. These are the kinds of neoliberal servants to white power that the system wanted to produce. They wanted to make sure that there'll be would never be another generation. They came out of the 1960s and 70s. In fact, what they wanted to produce was what Cory Booker identified with, and that is an American. The counter-revolutionary process, the ideological component of it had a cultural component also, and that was to in fact produce an American with an American consciousness, and I'm using American in a negative way, an American consciousness, American worldview, sensitivity, sensibility, a loyal servant to white nationalism. So it's not surprising that Cory Booker and the rest of the Negroes in the Congressional Black Caucus, which is now a right-wing institution, will firmly embrace the perspectives, the positions of the Israeli fascists, reflecting what I believe to be the right-wing character of U.S. society in general, and specifically the right-wing character of much of what is seen as the Black leadership class in this country. So it's pathetic. He stands with everybody but the Palestinians. So basically, the kind of dehumanization that we see that these gangsters are involved in to justify, to make the Palestinians killable. You got these kinds of Negroes trying to embrace and use the moral authority of Black resistance to give merit to that kind of backwardness. Is despicable.
Now you've kind of already sort of answered this, not maybe in a linear way, but can you, because I got this term from you, or we're using this term as a tweet we saw from you, and I'll bring that up in a little bit, but what do you define as a Negro servant, for those that may not know in our audience?
Well, a Negro now is used as a derogatory term for an individual, a fully colonized individual who has no self-dignity, who craves, who needs the validation from the colonial master, who has no idea and no objective about what it means to try to acquire independent power, who believes that self-determination for Black and colonized people is some kind of unrealizable dream, is something that's not even really desirable. It is someone who, as Malcolm described, if the master's plantation house is on fire, he or she will fight the fire harder than master. With those of us who understand who we are and our relationship to colonial power, as we watch the house burning, we are praying, as Malcolm said, we're praying for a strong wind. Okay, so these are the servants of white power. These are the servants of the colonial capitalist system. These are the individuals tasked with the responsibility of making sure that, in fact, we stay on the plantation.
Why do you think, or can you speak to why does people like this, who we categorize in this category of Negro servant, several other names, why does it get such a gut reaction from radicals like yourself, like Margaret Kimberly? Like, why is it's such a vitriol? I feel it too, Nick. We talk about this. It's such a like a knee-jerk gut reaction. Can you speak to that? Why do we have that sort of reaction?
Well, partly, I mean, I speak to myself, partly because,
Right.
you know, I had an opportunity to actually grow up at a period where we really believed that we could win. We really believed that it was only a matter of time and building that we would be able to defeat this colonial project. There's no question about that in our minds, okay? If someone would have told me in 1973 that in 2023, we will have Negroes like Cory Booker, that we'll still be in a settler colonial project, that the US will still be running things globally, we would have thought that either this person was a fool or an agent, okay? So the fact that this is where we are today, to see where our people are at, to see where the Black radical movement is a very painful thing. You know, it's a very painful thing. But what offsets some of this, though, is that those of us who never gave up, as we continue to build and build organization, we have formations like the Black Alliance of Peace and others, where young people are gravitating to and learning how to engage in more effective struggle, who have not swallowed the line, where we see shows like this and young cats like you all, it gives us hope, you know. But to see a trader like this pig and others, you know, and to know we you know, we can't touch them at this point. Yeah, it is a very gut wrenching kind of experience.
Can't touch him. I love that.
Yeah,
Can you?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Nick, I'll let you squeeze in. Let me just get one more question before I pass it to you.
Go ahead.
This is a hot topic because what you said. I just don't want you to lose your train of thought on this, Ajamu. Why did you have that sense of belief during that time? What did you see? What was going on where nobody could tell you there's no way that we're not going to reach our goal, the promised land, in a certain, you know, maybe not in a defined amount of years, but you just knew it was coming. What were you seeing at that time? And at what point did you sort of see a decline? Was it the Reagan era? Was it pre-Reagan? Like, can you speak to both of those points? And then I'll pass.
No, that's a good question. And I mean, I come out the Black Liberation Movement. I consider myself a veteran of the Black Liberation Movement who's never surrendered. And so as a young man and growing up in like Southside Chicago, where people like Fred Hampton were actually real, seeing the developments of our people's movement, of going into the military at a very young age and becoming even more further radicalized by young men who were serious about change, to see the character of our people, and to understand and see the weaknesses of the enemy, and to understand too that we're part not only of a struggle in the U.S., but that we're part of a global struggle, and there was momentum that we have momentum globally among African people, among the colonized, and we had them on the defensive. That's why there was a self-conscious decision made by the bourgeoisie, symbolized by that infamous Lewis Powell memo that came out in 1971, that basically told the bourgeoisie, if y'all want to maintain this thing, you better be prepared to fight. Okay, so the momentum was with us, even though we were suffering body blows. The FBI was systematically murdering people across the country in 1970, 1971, going into 1972, okay? But we understood that is the price of liberation. And we understood that we were on the right side of history. So we were absolutely clear that we continue to build, that we can win more people over to struggle, that we can build stronger structures and institutions, and that we in fact could, with the balance of power shifting toward us, even though we were a minority, we understood that we represented the interests of a majority because we had a class analysis also. we believe that we can win. It wasn't really until it was for me. It wasn't really until the 1980s, after Reagan came into power, after we saw the liberals really begin to shift toward the right, when we saw seeing how difficult it was to reconsolidate, is when I began to see that we had some issues. You know, the 1980s, part of the inability to reconsolidate the black left was that we got consumed with a good portion of the 1980s with Jesse Jackson's bullshit. You know, we some of us
Sidetrack.
completely opposed Jesse's thing in 1983, 1984 as a diversion. Okay, but we also were developing certain kinds of awareness, and so some of us began to see that, hey, wait a minute, you know, we can't will this thing back into existence in terms of us having a kind of independent revolutionary presence. We're going to have to rebuild. If millions of our people are in this electoral bullshit, then for us to stand aloof from it is objectively reactionary. Okay. So we've got to figure out how and if we could we could use this thing to
Absolutely.
be in contact with our people, to engage in political education, to build institutions. So by 1988, when Jesse came back again, you know, some of us were basically supporting that idea. And the objective was this. And I was naive enough to believe that Jesse was serious about independent power. We thought that if we propped up this Rainbow Coalition thing and this run in for Jesse in '88, that when the white bosses in the Democratic Party would not give Jesse the nomination, or wouldn't put him on the ticket as the VP because he came in second to Dukakis. We thought Jesse would march black people out the Democrat Party.
So you saw the mistake our generation made a long time ago. That's so interesting.
Wow, you must have saw Bernie Sanders coming, or maybe you had an inkling at some point because you had to have deja vu. I can see it on your face. But continue with your answer if you wanted to finish there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically that so it was all strategy and tactics, and so we thought this was going to happen. It didn't happen, of course, because Jesse wasn't about real power. In fact, Jesse, I was literally in some of those smoke-filled rooms in Atlanta at the convention when Jesse basically sold the people out for some money and access to a
Sounds
plane.
so familiar.
Yeah, and so by 1992, and he already had basically told the Democratic Party bosses he was not going to run, and so they were going to give it to Bill Clinton, and the rest is history. So and Jesse was irrelevant in my opinion ever since. He systematically dismantled that Rainbow Coalition. That was it for Jesse Jackson. So yeah, we made mistakes. Okay, no question about that. Okay, but we always felt that, you know, you cannot hold yourself aloof from where the masses of the people are. And so we've been looking at ways that we can, in fact, do that. We kind of left alone for a while. For me, it wasn't really until the last decade or so when folks like Chokwe Lumumba and others began to talk about how we should reevaluate this. And when Chokwe ran in Jackson, we helped with that campaign to become a part of the city council. We began to see that there was some space there, and so he couldn't be criticized or condemned as some kind of bougie Negro, you know. You couldn't condemn the new African peoples, um, the Republic of New Africa, or the New African Peoples Organization, or the Malcolm X movement as being Negroes. This was a strategic move that was being made to ground what they considered to be the Kush Project. So that opened up the space for more sophisticated discussions and analysis of what this bourgeois electoral arena might offer, and also to continue to talk about the dangers of it also.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Nick. You wanted to jump in.
One thing I want to add to this, and CJ, let me know how you're doing, Tonk. I know you have.
I got to jet and get my daughter in a little bit.
We also have a post duopoly tonight as well that CJ will be hosting. So we got a lot of great content.
Doing some stuff tonight too,
as well. So I want to. I'm going to shift to the the conflict in Palestine, what's going on in Palestine. But regarding the Negro servants topic, you had Colin Powell, who once made one hell of a admittance once, where you were trying to explain to his white audience why racism doesn't exist in America. He was like, well, racism doesn't exist in America. All you gotta do, look at me. If you join the military, if you become a police officer, you can escape racism, you can climb the social ladder. So what is he saying? He's saying the system is so broken, in order to make it as a black man, you must be willing to implement state violence on your own people or other black and colonized people in the world. That's how you make it. Or you can also start a small business where you exploit other black capital, black labor, I should say. So even in that speech, he didn't even mean to say it. The ruling class will admit the best way to make it as a black man in this country is sell your own people. And you've seen this throughout time. It's nothing new. Even W.B. Du Bois, who had a lot of liberal tendencies, he famously called this out in the speech. I say all the time. Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, it's been a plague in our community. That's why it's important that we have people like Ajamu, and that's why I continue to call it out. But to shift on topics, I want to ask you about what I've been calling this mass genocidal psychosis that we've been seeing in the West, where people have been lying, spreading smears about the Palestinian people in order to justify a genocide. I'm gonna show you guys this tweet because I've seen a lot of different numbers. Like, we're still trying to reconcile what the hell is going on. So I'll read this tweet from Sarah. In the past 9 days alone, Israel has killed 1,030 Palestinian children, bombed schools, hospitals, ambulances, and civilian convoys, dropped white phosphorus munitions on civilian areas in Gaza and Lebanon, killed journalists, UN staffers, teachers, doctors, and paramedics, cut off food, water, fuel, electricity to 2.2 million people living in the biggest open-air prison on earth. So the segment that's going to come up, I'm going to call, you have Zionists that trying to go on a PR campaign to explain their genocide, and they are only coming off as unhinged. So before we get started on that, I want to get your general thoughts on what's going on, Ajamu, and what a lot of people in the West are getting wrong.
Well, what's going on right now, and I think it's obvious for any of us who can see, whose consciousness is not clouded by white supremacy. What we are forced to witness is, in fact, a crime against humanity, a genocidal assault on a occupied and conquered people, whose only crime, from the perspective of the colonists, is that they have resisted, that they have formations that have remained intact, that they have formations that build a capacity for military defense. And as a consequence of that, they are now being forced to suffer, to be subjected to what everybody recognizes as an illegal international crime, which is the crime of imposing collective punishment on an occupied people. The only the only collective rights we have in play in this so-called conflict between the fascist Israeli state and the Palestinian people are the rights of the Palestinian people. Palestinian people have a collective right to resist occupation, to resist colonization. And so this notion that Israel has a right to defend itself is a bogus right. It's a fictitious right. It does not exist except in the imaginations of the white West. So we are forced to watch this insane, this brutal assault on these people, and it's almost like it's entertainment. I mean, here you have people who have no place to run, who are being subjected to constant bombardment, constant attacks by jets, and the Western nations, the leadership at least of those Western nations, they frame this as though it's some kind of moral crusade. You know, look at the comments from this Tom a few minutes ago, Cory Booker, that this is a moral crusade. If you don't believe that Hamas and the Palestinian people, let's be clear, This whole thing with Hamas is not real. It's not about Hamas, and even spokespersons from the Israeli side have made it clear. It's about the Palestinian people. They are there to punish the Palestinian people. They're not waging war against Hamas. They waging war against the Palestinian people. We are forced to observe this, to watch it. It is one of the most obscene spectacles ever. But you know what? As a consequence of this, what the Israelis might be winning the short-term military battle, but they definitely are losing the ideological war.
Yeah. And Caitlin Johnstone made this amazing point, just to show you guys how brainwashed people are being. Israel had a hard time finding Hamas for years, right? Now they're waging this war in Gaza, and they know exactly where Hamas is. They bombing hospitals because they know Hamas is there, but CJ, they didn't know where Hamas was before. Like, it was a mystery. But now they know exactly where Hamas is, despite the fact they're bombing them. No, they're waging war against Palestinians, and we're gonna make that very clear. I'm gonna show you guys officials from Israel going on Western media sources and making complete asses of themselves. Before I do, I want to back up another point you make, and this is something I've been screaming from the rooftops. Israel is the only party that is not in compliance with international law. Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken rejoined the UN Human Rights Council because they were getting frustrated because other countries, including Western vassals, wanted to go after Israel for war crimes and their apartheid. It's been the United States and their veto power that have been preventing Israel from being held accountable for the criminal rogue regime that they are. Palestinians, based on the UN Charter, has the right to resist their use armed resistance to resist their occupier. These are facts that they will not explain to you on the social on corporate media at all. Like, facts over your feelings, right? These are the facts. These are the laws that you guys write down in your white books that I am quoting here, right? I was at. Go ahead if you want to chime in, John. Go ahead.
Just real quickly, and that's why they don't adhere to international law. Instead of international law, they talk about a rules-based order where they make the rules and they enforce the order. They are operating outside of international law. So you ask the question: if a state is operating outside of the law, then how do you characterize that state? That state is characterized as an outlaw.
Yes.
What states operate as outlaws? Rogue states. So the U.S. basically is a rogue state, including the state of Israel, engaging in international gangsterism. So this has to be framed in that way, because we have to undermine, at least within the U.S., this sort of the moral foundation that there's something there to defend when it comes to this relationship between the Israeli colonial state and the conquered people, the Palestinians. This is and the fact that people can believe that is justifiable to treat people in this fashion. What it does is just it helps to reveal the true character, not only of the U.S. and Israel, but the true character of the Western colonial project from 1492. And these people do not believe in their own values of liberalism. These people are the same people that basically justified the conquering of North America, justified the attempted genocide against Native people across the so-called Americas. These are the same people who are willing today to blow up the entire planet in order to maintain a white Western hegemony.
Absolutely well said. And I want to show you guys, because CJ, you did a good job covering this earlier. I went to the Kansas City Free Palestine protest, spoke with, try to show solidarity the best way I can to all my Palestinian brothers and sisters. Because I want you guys to understand everything that you hear from me regarding this issue, I get from my Palestinian brothers and sisters. I'm following their lead the same way I expect my white ally, my Latino brothers and sisters, to follow my lead when it comes to Black issues. I trust them. This is an obvious issue of settler colonialism, So I went to this protest, and I want to show you guys this. CJ covered this a little bit yesterday. Let me pull this up. Let me pull the other one up. Not that one. This one here. I also interviewed one of the lead organizers of the event to get their statement. I'm gonna show you guys one of them just for the sake of time. I'm planning a time where we can bring them on RBN so you guys can hear their voices. And because Zionism has no basis legally, intellectually, morally, they had to rely on mass censorship. You have the West that's cracking down on protesters. You have Josh Hawley and many people on the right that's calling for investigations of people attending pro-Palestinian protests, like this person here. So what I did, I pretty much asked for a statement. You guys here. I just want to show you guys. This came from the lead organizer at the protest I was at.
Can you share with me your guys' demands and what you guys are here for?
Absolutely. So we're here, as always, to demand three things, which is an end to the 75-year-long occupation of Palestine, an end to the 16-year-long siege of the Gaza Strip, and an end for unconditional U.S. military, diplomatic, and financial support for Israel.
What will you say should people like me do, or what other people can do that can help and support your cause?
I think it's really important for anybody who wants to understand this issue or who feels drawn to supporting it to understand that this is an issue that provides parallels all over the place. If you are interested, if you are somebody who is working on climate justice, let's talk about that and how it relates to Palestine. If you are interested in Black lives, let's talk about how that relates to Palestine. Let's talk about what racism looks like. Let's talk about what apartheid looks like. Let's talk about what ethnic cleansing looks like. Let's talk about what colonization of indigenous communities looks like. All of these issues are tied up in the Palestinian issue. So everybody has a place here. Everybody can choose to understand and to draw the parallels with the things that they already understand and believe and find those issues within the Palestinian movement.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I care about this is because if you look at Nelson Mandela, I interviewed his grandson, Nelson Mandela. We look at Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, and Palestinians. There's been long-time solidarity.
Yes.
We've been through the same kind of struggle. That's why I think it's extremely important for us to come together and fight the same machine that we put in the
Absolutely.
I appreciate your words. Any final statements you want to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just to piggyback onto that, like that's how there are parallels, right, between our struggles, but there are numerous wonderful Black historians, lecturers, activists, community leaders who have gone to Palestine and who come back and say, that can't be sustained. We can't do that. These struggles are not just running side by side, they are intertwined with one another. Go back and read what James Baldwin said when he went to Palestine, what Malcolm X, as you said, when he went to Palestine, what Angela Davis says when she talks about Palestine. There are so many overlaps, and this is important for all of us to be involved, to understand, and to support one another across the board.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It was fantastic
Nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
Well.
Free Palestine.
I met so many wonderful people like that. So many people who are wonderfully based. And like I said many times before, when I have conversations with Palestinian people, they immediately recognize the parallels and connections. You guys probably know this as well. There's liberals and conservatives that are always trying to bring a wedge between our groups that I completely reject. Now, one of the reasons I show solidarity, I know I went a little long, but I want to get your thoughts on this, Ajamu, because it goes to this part. You see the Western liberal democracy facade falling apart. You see bans on protests like this in France, Germany, the UK. Luckily, people are disobeying that order, but I want to get your thoughts on this Western crackdown. Our brother JB Font, his channel was demonetized simply for telling the truth about the Israeli conflict. So I want to get your general thoughts on the West crackdown. Look at this headline: ban on protests supporting Palestinians is disproportionate attack on the right to protest in France. And this is the headline we shared earlier. France bans all pro-Palestinian protests. So I just want to get your general response to this before we move on to Ajamu.
Well, what I kind of alluded to it earlier. That basically what we see is the crisis of liberalism. This ability to protest, to have free speech, access to information. This was one of the key principles of classic liberalism. But because of the crisis that the West is facing in terms of trying to maintain its global hegemony, they have made a decision to jettison liberalism. and to embrace fascism. Because when you ban protests, when you suggest that there has to be one state line on a particular issue, like this one, that basically where is the democratic rights? Where are the human rights? So what we see now is again the West stripping away the pretense that is all about power. They never cared about these values. These values were just tools that were used to perpetuate their dominance. And what they're experiencing now is that these values are a yoke, and so they have embraced full fascism. How much more fascist can you get
Absolutely.
than to protest, to ban protest? People who have a right to have a different perspective, a different position on a political issue. If this is not fascism, then somebody explain to me what it is.
You have Berlin as another group. I want to show this as well. They also banned protests in the UK. They also having police crack down on pro-Palestinian protests. The illusion of Western liberal democracy is falling apart. And I want you guys to also realize the same right-wing free speech warriors, absolutely silent. And I've been calling out from day one. They always been silent on this issue. When their boy Ron DeSantis cracked down on BDS protests in Florida, you had government employees that was getting fired. Yeah, there was a teacher that took it to the Supreme Court and she lost. And this came from Florida. So this is the real West, and this is them shifting their ideology, becoming more fascist to crack down on Zionism, on people who resist Zionism, because Zionism is a losing and a failed project. Like, I want people to understand, like, even outside of left arguments, Zionism is a failed project, because the project of Zionism was to create a safe haven for Jewish people, right? There's nowhere more dangerous to be if you're Jewish than Israel. It's a failed project. A project that started in blood will always end and continue on blood. So I want to show
What's
you guys.
interesting too is that
Go for it.
two weeks ago, Netanyahu was under fire in his own
Yes.
country. His ability to govern was really being questioned. Today, as a consequence of this war, you have a surface unity in Israel, and you have governments across the West are rushing to embrace this fascist government. So yes, they are being completely revealed for the character of this Western project. And you're right, the project in Israel, the Zionist project, has failed, and the only solution has to be, and as you said, we're taking this from our Palestinian comrades, that has to be one secular state in that territory. There's no this bullshit about a two state thing was always nonsense from the very beginning. It was to divert away from the revolutionary project of building a multinational secular state there, with built-in protections. So this is over, but they are prepared, like the U.S. Instead of accepting this shift in power, shift in the balance of power and the correlation of power, they are attempting to use military might to try to preempt the inevitable.
Let me insert a let me insert a question here, because it's something you and I, Nick, have been kind of talking about with the latest news that's happening with the struggle in Palestine, and that is, Ajamu, how do you see the interest that the United States has? Do you see it as purely military? Do you see it as purely colonial cellular project? Like, I always talk about it in the sense that it's like if being a colonizer was a person, it's like the United States is an 89-year-old colonizer, and Israel is like a 25-year-old young buck, and the United States is kind of like seeing itself in Israel. Oh, I remember those times when I was killing all those people and wiping out a genocide. So they kind of see it themselves in it. That's kind of like why they have to take positions on what they say retaliation and terrorism instead of a resistance. Like, they would, if this, what they're calling Palestinian resistance is terrorism, than what they call slave revolts. You get what I'm saying? So could you sort of speak to that or any part of that, please?
Well, they were very clear about slave revolts. It was terrorism. They may not have used those terms, but basically that's how they saw it. And they lived in the fear of the slave rising up. So yeah, look, the Fort Israel was a very useful instrument during the latter part of the 20th century and in some parts of the 21st century. Fort Israel is now an impediment for the longer term objectives in the so-called Middle East. And the Israelis know that. So they are basically attempting to advance their interests based on how they see their interests. If it means to bait the U.S. into trying to counteracting the rise of Iran, then that's what they do. That's what they did. Okay. If it means to help facilitate a conflict that could undermine the possibility of a reconciliation between Iran and the Saudi Arabians, then that's what they will do. You know, they are looking out for their particular self-interest, and the U.S. is, because of its public positions, they find themselves in a tough place to impose real constraints on Israel. Right now, there are many reports, and it makes sense, that the U.S. is very much concerned about this ground invasion. They understand that if Israel is able to, in fact, smash Hamas and the other resistors militarily, it's going to evoke a tremendous price. That is going to the possibility of a real regional wide conflict is there, including a two-front war. And the beating that Israel and the U.S. would take as their main allies will be irreversible. It's already irreversible to a certain extent. So they're trying to put some constraints on Israel. Plus, they also recognize that the Israelis are bombing the stuff out of Palestinians, but they know that the resistance forces are laying in the cut. They are laying there in those tunnels. They are preparing. They are waiting for the incursion to begin. Okay, this is going to be a bloody battle, and they need to avoid that. And so people are trying to talk to them. Say, hey, look, okay, y'all murdered 2,000 Palestinians. Okay, have you got your revenge yet? Let's figure a way out of this before it's too late. Okay, but because you have the most vicious and irrational Israeli government probably ever, and they know they have the ability to wag the dog, if you will. They're out of control. They're out of control.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I want to add to the extreme Israeli fascism because I've been hurting a lot of feelings this last week, and I'm going to continue to because I use words the way they're supposed to be used. Ajamu earlier was using words the way they're supposed to be used. So let's use words the way they're supposed to be used this segment, okay? Here's the Israeli minister that seeks to imprison citizens who harm national morale regarding their genocide of the Palestinian people. Because I told you guys Zionism does not equal Judaism. That's an anti-Semitic trope. Jews all around the world, including in your own state of Israel, reject Zionism. So what do Israel do to respond to this obvious PR disaster? Old school fascism. Old school fascism here. Likud minister formulates emergency regulations to imprison citizens who harm national morale. So this is Dan Cohen. I will get your thoughts on this. Like, this is a shocking headline, right? Dan Cohen, who we had on last week. I'll read the first tweet first, actually. He says Zionism equals fascism. This is the headline I just read about them imprisoning citizens. These allow him to enforce restrictions on publications that were used as a base for enemy propaganda, quote unquote, including confiscation of equipment, removal of citizens from their homes, arrest. Now let's get to this tweet. Another one. The Zionist regime is passing legislation to hunt down and imprison dissident Jews. What other way can you say other than that? This isn't a sign of strength. It shows weakness. Zionism has entered an irreversible death spiral. How long can it last? So any response on that, Ajamu, before I move on?
No, I think it almost speaks for itself. That basically, what we have here is a clear move toward using the power of the state in order to impose the position of the state, to criminalize dissent. We saw very similar kinds of actions take place in Ukraine with the fascists that run that government, clapping down on dissent. This again is exposing the true nature of this colonial project. It's the colonial project that makes the link, that links all of us together in terms of opposition, that links us with the Palestinians. And it's this link that people are beginning to understand with much more clarity. And when they understand that, they are now in more effective resistance. And so the result or the response from the colonists is what? To criminalize those positions. This is a very, very dangerous development, folks, because it means that basically, as things are tightening up, even in the U.S., that any kind of dissident speech and thought will be subject to criminal prosecution. It's already happening. Omar Yeshitilla and the Hoover are examples number one.
So if I was to say Israel is a fascist state, you know how many people get mad at me? Like, we could easily get in big trouble for saying that. But what is this? Are we supposed to use words?
I said again. Israel is an apartheid criminal along with his daddy, the U.S.
Yes.
We use words the way they're supposed to be used, and we hurt people feeling because we do that, apparently. And that's what we're going to do. If you get upset because we use the words the way they're supposed to be used, that's not our problem. So I have a few more things to show. I'm going to show you guys this poll where Americans largely support genocide. And surprise, surprise, the results vary based on age, race. So you have boomers, silent generation, white people that are, hell yeah, we all for the genocide. And insane numbers. Younger generations like, what the fuck is going on over there? But overall, a large majority of Americans support what Israel is doing. So we're going to cover that, and we're going to cover why that is. Massive amount of propaganda. So I don't have a ton of time on this, but John moves CJ, just let me know how you're doing on time, because I have just a few receipts that I want to share here. This is Mark Lamont Hill, who is not without sin on this issue. The funny thing, he was fired from CNN or some shit like that for telling the truth about Israel, but he also smeared people as anti-Semite. So he's not without sin on this issue, to be clear. But he's one of the only people who have access to Israeli government officials that has wanted to tell the truth on this issue. The fact that he is not without sin is how he gets this access in the first place. But here, he does a legitimately great job where you will never see anyone else do, where he gets this guy to admit, the former foreign minister of Israel, to admit that Israel deliberately targeting civilians. Feel free to interrupt anytime, guys, but I want to get your guys' reaction to this great. Once again, I got a lot of criticism of Mark Lamont Hill, but this is great stuff by him, to be honest. So let's listen.
He said that the humanitarian situation, quote, will only deteriorate exponentially, and that crucial life-saving supplies, including fuel, food, and water, must be allowed into Gaza. So the UN is saying you must do this. You are saying you're not going to do this. How do you?
No, we're not saying that.
He's saying do it. He's saying doing it immediately. What I'm saying is what you're doing.
No.
He's saying doing it immediately.
I got you. I'll tell you exactly what we're saying. I'm saying we will do everything for the Gazan people. Once and now we demand immediate surrender, unconditional surrender of Hamas. If Hamas people come out with their hands up and clear their weapons, believe me, everything will be restored to Gaza. It is Hamas in Hamas hands.
Now I understand. Thank you for clarifying that, sir. I think we're actually on the same page here. You're saying that once Hamas leaves, you'll grant the Gazan people food, shelter, fuel, electricity, hospitals, schooling. And if they don't, and if Hamas doesn't leave, then they'll continue to starve and die in hospitals. You are defining for the international community right now collective punishment. You're saying until Hamas acts differently, the 2 million people in Gaza are going to be treated this way. And once Hamas acts differently, these 2 million people in Gaza will be treated better. That is exactly what collective punishment is. You're holding them accountable for the actions of others. That is the definition, the textbook definition of collective punishment, sir. Now you may accept.
Now Mark Lamont Hill just checkmated him, something that no one else on Western media is doing. But I'll let it continue.
That's what you want to do, but this is absolutely a contravention of international law.
Well, I'll tell you exactly. No, if we pushed them to the wall, we're not pushing them to the wall. We want to open a humanitarian corridor so they can leave. But if Hamas,
so that who can leave? Citizens? You're saying civilians can leave,
He's destroying
but
it.
only through the Rafah border, correct?
At this point, yes.
So they can't
because
come.
Where else?
Your country. They can come into Israel.
Destroy.
I'm telling you one more thing I want to say.
But I want you to address that point. Don't just smile, sir. Respectfully, you're saying you're making a corridor. They can go to Egypt. You're bombing them. You say you want to save them, but they can't come in.
First of all, I'm not smiling. I'm crying in my heart.
Easily dismantled. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this because this segment is called essentially Israeli officials unhinged on national TV. This is a LPR tour. This is just one example of this. Ajamu, what's your thoughts? CJ, you can give your thoughts on as well.
Absolutely.
Basically, if you have a real journalist raising the proper questions, this would be the response every time. But what we have in the U.S., we have propagandists posing as journalists. I mean, every point that Mark Lamont Hill made is spot on. That basically there's no argumentation that Israeli officials can engage in that will avoid the fact that they are involved in a vicious campaign that countervails international law, and that there is a grounding, a basis for an international criminal court prosecution if you had a real independent international criminal court, which of course we don't.
Absolutely. I'm gonna be getting ready to go here soon. So I did have a question though, Nick, if you don't mind. I'm just gonna insert a question. It's not on topic.
Yeah, feel free. Absolutely. Go
just
ahead.
because I gotta get going in a second. I want to give him enough chance to answer. And that is Green Party 2024 election in Cornel West. Just to get your overall general, I don't really have a specific question because I feel like I've gotten answers to a lot of these questions I had before. But what is your overall sort of outlook for the Green Party's future, like moving forward, post the possibility of a Cornel West candidacy, and also what is your what is the right word? What is your thoughts on Cornel West moving from Green Party to independent? What you're willing to share, of course.
Let me start with that last question first. And I've shared this with Cornel. I think Cornel made a historic mistake by basically abandoning a apparatus, a structure that in fact could have resulted in him being on the ballots in key states. He in fact provided a gift to the Democrat Party under the guise that they were going to build an independent effort that was going to get them on the ballot, and that therefore shedding themselves of the Green Party for whatever reasons wasn't really a big deal. But it's not real. And on top of that confusion is the confusion is compounded with some of Cornel's positions on the issue of organization. He's making this argument about the parties and the impediments of parties and this and that, but we know that basically an unorganized people are not going to be able to resist. Absolutely. Okay, the people are not looking for saviors. The people are looking to resist. They want to improve their lives, and I think people are now sophisticated enough to understand that that's not going to happen as a consequence of some individual leaders. We have to have movement. We have to have organizations. We have to have social movements, and we have to have parties. Okay, to suggest otherwise, objectively, is to push
not only a line of confusion, but a reactionary line. And we hope that the brother will cease and desist from that. Okay. If you're not entering into this electoral process with the objective to build effective opposition, to build organization, to not push the notion that we're going to make progress through any one election, and that what we have to in fact build is dual power, then why engage in this? Why confuse people? Okay, so we're hoping that our dear brother, can really alter some of these positions. I'm not going to get into. I'm not going to try to analyze why he keeps referring to all the things he had to do within the Green Party, the kind of things that anybody would have to do. There would have been no problem for Cornel West. People have to raise their own questions in terms of real accountability and what do we need in 2024 going forward. This notion of saviors, I think, is over.
That was extremely well articulated. And remember what I said at the very beginning of this, CJ? This is only beneficial for us if this help advance our movement, right? And there's a great point. So I really wish I had the receipt. I don't have it because they made it like 2 weeks ago regarding why this is such a catastrophic decision. So why is it important to support third parties, guys? What we said on our show, to get 5% federal funding. So now he left the Green Party. Now the Green Party not getting that 5% federal funding that could have helped state and local races. So now there's no fucking point. Where the 5% federal funding going now? Where's the long-term goal? Go ahead, John.
Check this out, though. You see, the Green Party, they're going to continue. This notion that the Green Party emerges every 4 years is bullshit. They run candidates constantly on the local and state levels. They're going to run also a candidate in this election again. There's no question about that.
I heard that.
The thing with the Cornel West campaign was some of us were arguing we're not concerned about no fucking 5%. This is important. If we get it, and I don't think there's any question it would have been secured. With the particular kinds of configurations of power and the specific dynamics of 2024, with the possibility of this no labels movement getting on 50 states, with the libertarians all drawn from the Republican right, with this freak Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Running as an independent, with the fact that 40% of the Democrats would consider a third party. There was this plurality developing. There was a plurality that could have been a path to the fucking White House, maybe.
Yes.
That might sound naive to some people, whatever, but history unfolds like that in these weird kind of ways, okay? What other candidate out there could have pulled African people from the Democrat Party? That was the main concern they had, okay?
That gets me right.
Running for power, you are giving a gift to these freaks.
Jeez. Well, it does my heart well. I must say, it does my heart. I feel a lot better knowing that your voice was there articulating. It sounds like almost identical message that we thought we delivered to him here in multiple interviews. We thought we delivered this message about why it's important to stay with the Green Party before we even knew any of this was going to happen. We thought this is why we think it's important. It's important to be on ballots in swing states. This is the reason why. This is not about being elected. We told him to his face, we don't think you're going to get elected. This is about building power. This is about building a movement. This is about drawing people away from the duopoly. That's what this campaign is all about. So, not to talk about any of it.
You're not concerned about the Green Party. If you believe the Green Party is an apparatus that wasn't adequate for what you were trying to build, what are you trying to build? When that question was posed to him by Brianna and others, there's no effective response. If you're not talking about building structures, building organization, building movement, then what are you doing, my dear brother?
And that's the question. That's really that really is the question. I'll pass it to you. I do want to say thank you for coming. I do apologize that I got to cut out a little early to go pick up my daughter. She has a minimum day today, so schedule. So I do thank you for being here. We now, I believe we have a communication, an email. So now we'll have a more effective way of inviting you, because if we had a better communication line up until now, we would have had you on at least twice the amount of times that you've been on so far. So because it's just times we want to reach out to who we consider you one of our elders, so we want to reach out for and tap your brain for some things. So I appreciate you being here. I do apologize, but thanks everybody.
No, good. We had both do outfit today, so CJ is doing double.
I'll be back later tonight.
Yeah. So and John, I appreciate your time. Let me know how you're doing on time, because there are a few things I only plan an hour, but there's a few things I have to get to. Feel free to hang out if you have time.
I can give you a few more minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Because we showed you I showed you before. That was a great segment that CJ just rapped with. But let's get back to the Israeli spokespeople embarrassing themselves on media, because they went and a lot of them been successful because they go on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. They have softball embarrassing interviews, and we see Mark Lamont Hill ask basic questions and trap this guy to admit that Israeli is committing a war crime. Their policy is of war crimes. Once again, Mark Lamont Hill is not without sin. We did a segment a few months ago criticizing him because he was calling someone an anti-Semite. I gotta remember the exact circumstance, but I remember I had my take was, I can't believe he was doing that when he was fired from CNN for being one of the few people that criticized Israel. So that's the Israeli extremism that we were seeing. If you do what Mark Lamont Hill did, you're not allowed on CNN. Now let me quickly show you this one for sake of time. This is the Israeli ambassador to the UK. And I don't know what her intentions were in this interview. She would have got away with it. She was interviewing the average corporate journalist. I don't know the background of this person. But this person asked follow-up and then let her get away with the insanity that she was saying. I don't want to spoil, like, the literally thing it speaks for herself. She's essentially doing genocide denial here.
What's the view on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza this morning?
There is no humanitarian crisis because
there isn't.
There is no. Israel is.
There's 1,000 Palestinian babies that was killed. She is and they're committing a war crime. They're preventing food, fuel, electricity but she's saying there's no humanitarian crisis. So allow her to explain, because it gets even more unhinged from here.
In charge, it's because
there isn't.
There is no. Israel is in charge of the safety of the Israelis. Hamas is in charge of the safety of the Palestinians.
We've been showing pictures this morning that would illustrate that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you a mother?
Yes.
What would you think if your children would have been executed in front of your eyes? Would you expect your government to think about those Nazis committing those crimes and to say, wait a second, first of all, we need to protect the enemy, and then to protect my children? Your children come as priority to your prime minister.
So
do you know that?
We have been showing images this morning that illustrate that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
So blame Hamas and ask Hamas why they started those atrocities, walking around.
Very sane person here, right? This is the mindset of Israel and their officials here. It's okay for them to commit war crimes, and she's going to use the appeal to emotion. You're a mother, right? You as a mother, you just sponsored genocide. I'll let the clip continue, and I'll get your thoughts, Ajamu. We only got a minute here.
Acknowledge that there is a humanitarian crisis.
I'm saying there is no. Israel is working.
So what do you think is happening?
What is happening? There is a war in Gaza, a war that Hamas started by committing horrible massacre on innocent Israelis. The world have seen that. Wait a second.
Innocent civilians.
Just I want to say and give a little bit of the context. Those people created crimes that are worse than ISIS. When the Americans started this fight of ISIS, together with the coalition forces, over 100,000 civilians got caught in a crossfire. Israel is trying to prevent that. Israel is better than any other army in the world. We are alerting. We're giving them the opportunity to have a shelter. We're doing things that no other Western army did in the past.
So I know that was hard to sit through, John. What's your thoughts?
That is, as you said, is reflective of a mindset that believes that a retaliation, collective punishment is appropriate. It's not about just targeting the so-called terrorists, but targeting the individuals, the people, the populace that they believe support their enemy. So the punishment of the people is an appropriate response to the sufferings of an Israeli mother. It is the assumption that the correct moral position would be that if your child was murdered or husband was murdered or whoever was murdered by Hamas, that the accepted response would be massive, indiscriminate retaliation, murdering everyone, guilty and innocent. This is the morality of psychopaths. But unfortunately, it's the morality that seems to have been embraced by officials in the West and people throughout the U.S. society. Now, I'm so happy and proud to see that there are young people across the U.S. and across Europe that have not allowed themselves to be intimidated into silence and non-opposition. They are facing their governments and these illegal bans on protests, that are not being intimidated into silence because they're being accused of being terrorist sympathizers or whatever, and they are standing up for the rights, for the humanity of Palestinians. This is another one. This is insane.
Yeah, I'm glad you've seen this one. Once again, this segment is all about Zionists going on this PR. I don't know what they expected. Like they go on these PR projects, and the vast majority of the time, the corporate media talking head is holding their hand and like asking them questions to avoid them saying crazy shit. You know what I mean? But they can't help it sometimes. So here's another example. Here's an Israeli soldier essentially admitting that they're going to war with civilians.
I tried to correct you to the answer. The war is not just with Hamas. The war is with all the civilians. That
you hear what he said? He said, I tried to correct you earlier because if you watch the full context of the interview, the black woman anchor, one of the Negro servants, she was kind of trying to like guide him through, like, come on, please don't say some shit. That'll be bad for PR for you here. And then he's like, no, let me correct myself. You misunderstood. We are committing a genocide. Well, John, what's your take on this?
Well, what got me is that what was the pushback from the interviewer?
Yeah,
that was the news that was being made. So you would think that any journalist worth their weight at all would say, well, can you clarify? Are you suggesting that the Israel is consciously engaged in activity that would be classified as war crimes? She had an obligation to raise that question.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point, Ajamu. And despite insane Israeli rhetoric, and this show why we got in the game we got into. That's why I don't understand sellouts on YouTube, because I wouldn't do this for any other reason other to flip people's opinion on the correct position. Correct? There's no other reason for me to do this other than to help the working class be more revolutionary, have more revolutionary discipline. You know what I mean? And we got a lot of work to do, right? And because of the nonstop, nauseating, pro-Zionist propaganda that we have in our media, you have Americans that overwhelmingly support Israel. I'll just read a few headlines here. Americans strongly support Israel, but there are generational and racial divides. And I was looking at the survey earlier. Let me see if I can pull it up again, just so you guys have context. 77% of Republicans, 69% Democrats said the United States should support Israel. Only 54% independents believe that, which I still think is a lot. But the racial gaps are much larger and the age gaps is larger. 78% of those who are I think that like Gen X or older, 45 or older, think the United States should support genocide. But only 48% of people under 45 does. Which was, again, I think these numbers these are disgusting numbers, but at least half our generation get it. But Gen X and above, they sponsoring genocide just based on these numbers. But John, feel free to interrupt if you want to chime in.
No, I'm curious. I haven't seen this one.
Yeah, and so I'm glad that we get a chance to break this down by number. This is the graph I saw earlier. Look at the silent generation. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. So the gray is the people who don't know shit about the issue, which is fair because people got a lot of shit going on. So gray people like, I don't know what the fuck going on. Green are the people who strongly support Israel. The people who are in the orange are based. Understand what the fuck is going on. Look at the silent generation and baby boomers. This is the result, and even Gen X, this is the result of nonstop corporate media pro-Zionist propaganda.
Exactly.
And we got a lot of work to do.
Well, now where's the race thing?
Let's go by race. If I remember right, I think it was 50% of Black Americans. Here it is. Well, they said non-whites. They say along racial lines, just 51% of non-whites in the United States said the United States should support Israel, which is a fucking ton. A ton of non-whites saying they support the genocide of Palestinians. But look, 72% of white people, 7 out of 10, support genocide in Israel. So I'm up for a challenge. We got a lot of work to do. These are horrific numbers, but John, what are your thoughts on it?
No, I think that look, I think you're right that basically 25 years ago you would have a number of non-whites at 51%. But again, it just demonstrates how far to the right the U.S. as a society has moved. Absolutely. But again, we have hope because you have these young people who are not falling for the okie doke. They haven't fallen for it completely on Ukraine. They're not falling for it now with Palestine, but they're paying the price. But that's all right, because that's the basis we are trying to organize on. The young folks, the young working class people, Black folks, Black working class folks, because it is the working class that's paying the price for these conflicts. This money and the resources they're using to prop up Ukraine and Israel and everybody else, they're using public resources. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't get medical care and food and adequate housing and consistent food, et cetera, because the bourgeoisie are using your resources to prop up, their geostrategic interests, be it supporting Israel, Ukraine, or whatever. Okay, so people are beginning to make those connections to begin to understand that this thing is rigged, and that to be a U.S. nationalist is to be opposed to your own interests. So what we have to do as revolutionaries, we've got to continue doing the work. Using these opportunities to point out the contradictions, moving people toward organization, engaging in the teach-ins on the local level, building local power, building dual and contending power is a process, but it's a process that we can win because it's not sustainable for them to try to maintain this relationship of exploitative power. It's not sustainable. Outside of the white West, the entire global South are like, hey, we see now what people like Ajamu and others have been saying. The West represents an existential threat to global humanity. Okay? And so we've got to get our stuff together, engage in opposition in our countries, but also to be in a position to support oppositional activity, oppositional work, oppositional politics within the center of empire.
This is why it's such an honor to have you on. It's great to have your knowledge because this is the revolutionary optimism, the revolutionary discipline that we've been talking about. We have a lot of anger towards what we call the true political nihilists. It's weird they try to twist it on us, right? They call us nihilists because we don't vote for Joe Biden. But think about their mindset. They gave up so much. They believe that revolution is not possible. They believe in what people call capitalist realism, where we will always be stuck in this oppression system. So they gave up. They gave up to the point where they're willing to vote for Jim Crow Joe. They're willing to sell out Palestinians, indigenous people, and other colonized people on a devil's bargain that they may get some domestic win because they won over the neocons. And that's not even true, fam. But that's who the Marianne Williamsons are. That's who the Crystal and Cows are. Like, people think this is YouTube drama, I call these people out, but no, they do a great disservice to the working class with their nihilism that they project on the workers. Speaking of Pac-Man, but I remember there was a video we did a breakdown of him a long time ago. Like, well, if Trump lose, we all screwed. We all screwed if Republicans win. Like they want you to have this nonstop doomsday approach to life where you gotta support evil in order to survive. But me and John and what we're saying, it doesn't matter what happened between those elections. We got work to do. We need to build, and we're not going to give up. We're not going to give in to the nihilism of capitalist realism that is extremely persuasive among the general professional managerial class and social democrats. But sorry, that mini rant, but that was very thought-provoking. I'm going to get back to the segment here on why Americans are so propagandized. I went a little bit longer because I wanted to cover this. We're almost done. Because you have the media waves that are completely controlled by AIPAC and Zionists right now. Even to the point where these tap dancing clowns, I gotta be careful for the sake of our channel. The tap dancing clown like Ali Vesci, we cover these people all the time. There's no one that went harder in the paint for Ukraine and neo-Nazis and NATO than Ali Vesci. We have done countless Ajamu segments. Like, do you see what the fuck Ali Vesci just said here? But even him selling out to NATO and Ukraine, he wasn't safe on this issue. Look at this. U.S. News Network, MSNBC, suspends Muslim anchors amid Israeli war in Gaza. These are the people that the right think is woke. The people think this is the left liberal network. Now I'll pass to you, John, for your thoughts on this, but because this is Mac's amazing analysis on this, showing why Americans are pro-Zionist and why we got work to do. The reason why I started this goddamn YouTube channel, we are here to black out corporate propaganda. That's what we have on our banner. That's our goal. Now, this is why CNN went 2 hours today without showing any video of Gaza destruction and did not include a single non-Jew in the studio for 1.5 hours. The network made sure everyone in the studio was a committed Zionist. I'm going to skim the rest of this.
Yeah.
John, if you want to chime in, feel free.
This is it. I mean, basically, this is supposed to be journalism. It's nonstop propaganda. And what is so outrageous about what happened at MSNBC is that you would think that liberals who have always pretended to be champions of free speech, fair play, that they would have been outraged by this. Because as you said, these three individuals, you can't get safer individuals. These were servants of white power. There's no question about that. But they weren't trusted when it came to making sure that the hegemony of the white perspective would prevail. They weren't sure because they didn't want to see any indirect criticism of Israeli policies. What gets me is that it's not enough to bring them back. What needs to take place is to identify who made that decision.
Yeah.
Those are the individuals who should be required to resign if these people had any kind of real integrity. This is absolutely outrageous, but it's dangerous because there was no real opposition to it. This is fascism, folks. This is what's so dangerous at this moment, that you have this particular kind of fascism developing, but people are still looking for Hitler, and they still looking for what we saw in the Nazi movies. Now, understanding that this corporate and state merger has taken place under the hegemony of the neoliberals. People are talking about Trump. I'm concerned about what's going to happen with a win by the neoliberal Democrats. At least under Trump, there's some degree of critical consciousness. There's some degree of opposition. There's no opposition under the neoliberal democratic regimes. And these are in my opinion, and I've been saying this in public, this element, this class element, they are the leading edge of fascism in the US. They are the driving force. The neoliberal Democrats, the neoliberal ruling class that controls the Democratic Party. These are the driving forces of U.S. fascism at this point in history.
Well said as always. I have just one more quick presentation, and I'll give your thoughts on this, and then I'll let you go. I appreciate you being very generous with your time today. So I'll try to get through this next segment very quickly because I want to show you guys how absolutely unhinged the Biden administration has become. I love how you said people are like looking for Hitler, but like Biden's right there, Jim Crow Joe's right there. There's not enough conversation about how absolutely unhinged the Biden administration is. This is Janet Yellen. She is the Secretary of the Treasury. Let me look my notes. I think I got that right.
Commerce or Treasury? Which one was it?
Yeah, United States Secretary of Treasury, something like that. Yeah, I got in my notes that was said. She's in the Biden cabinet, by the way. And this is her saying that America, yeah, we can afford another war. So let me play this real quick.
What this all means. Paul Tudor Jones, the famed investor, was on CNBC this week, and he said, "This is the most threatening and challenging geopolitical environment that I've ever seen. At the same time, the US is in its weakest fiscal position since World War II, with debt to GDP at 122%. Can America, can the West afford another war at this time?"
I think the answer is absolutely. America can certainly.
So journalists bring up all these challenges. You're like, yo, you motherfuckers trying to go to war in Ukraine? There's whispers about going to war with China. Now there's Israel. We didn't say exactly like that, but that's essentially the question. It's like, yeah, we can do all these wars. We can blow up the whole planet if we wanted to. These are the people that Joe Biden hired, the lesser evil. Anyway, let me finish. I'll let her finish the thought. But this is an insane question.
Another war at this time.
I think the answer is absolutely. America can certainly afford to stand with Israel and to support Israel's military needs. And we also can and must support Ukraine in its struggle against Russia. And look, the American economy is doing extremely well.
What this all means. Paul Tudor.
Because she say so?
This is insane. I mean, and Janet Yellen herself was one that was trying to that was concerned about monetary policy that was going too rapidly toward initiating a recession. Even though the ruling class had decided that was going to be the instrument that was going to be used to slow down the economy, to reduce inflation, and to undermine the power of workers. But you know, there's absolute ruling class unity when it comes to supporting the militarism of the state. And so, you know, you can't come up with $1.7 trillion to support Build Back Better with universal child care, et cetera, but there's no issue with coming up with unlimited amounts of money to support your military budget. Now, one of the reasons why they can do that is because these people, they print the money, okay? And that's why this dollar hegemony is so absolutely important for them. But, you know, without an effective political opposition, then they will continue to take these kinds of positions. The fact that you just shared with your audience that there at this point still a majority of people who believe that policies in Israel should be supported, that the Ukraine effort should be supported, then the ruling class has the cover, the green light to continue to pursue its own interests. But that has to shift. That's what you're saying, where the work is. You know, without accountability, without an effective opposition, then you give the ruling class has the ability to do whatever it wants to do. Our responsibility is for the break on them to the extent that we can. That is our task. That's our responsibility. And that's why it's so disheartening that we had the possibility of building a real kind of opposition, at least within the electoral process in 2024 around this whole Cornel West campaign that may have been blown to smithereens.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. Janet Yellen, another extremist hired by the Biden administration. You had Anthony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, Janet Yellen. He also just hired L.A. Abrams as well in his cabinet. But people call him lesser two evils. Like, this is the executive branch. These are the minds of the executive branch. This war criminal that's saying that the economy is great. We need to support Ukraine. And I first learned who Janet Yellen was when I saw her name on the 2022 Times Person of the Year award. So the establishment loves her. She's a superstar. Like this is from last year. Yellen made history when she became the first female Treasury Secretary. So isn't that great, Ajamu? We got a female Treasury Secretary that called for all-out global war. What progress!
Exactly. At one point, the head of every one of the major arms industries in the U.S. Was a woman, the CEO.
Yeah.
So yes, that's progress. You know.
Our enemies are very smart. They know exactly how to sell their project with girl power. She was on the Times 2022 Person of the Year. I was like, who the fuck is that? Ever since then, I've seen this. Every time I've seen her name, she's saying something unhinged. So of course the establishment loves her. Of course she does.
She speaks for them. So if she's unhinged, it's because the ruling element is unhinged, because that is their positions. It's important to point out though this: when Joe Biden came into power, when you look at some of the establishment rags like the Financial Times and the Economist, there was a consensus among the ruling elements that they may have to really significantly pull back on neoliberalism. They believe that because of the economic crisis, that they're going to have to make some concessions. But because the kind of oppositional politics they thought was going to emerge didn't emerge after the first few months, they abandoned that. But it just shows you how they can shift, their position based on their reading of the objective and subjective conditions.
Once again, there's not enough conversation about just how absolutely crazy the Biden administration cabinet is. And I know some people get mad at vote shaming, but some of you motherfuckers need to be ashamed of your vote. You voted for a guy. And I had discussions with people like Vosh and other Democratic social Democrat types that was like, oh, we are voting for harm reduction. Grow up, be an adult. Voting is not about your personal beliefs, it's harm reduction. That's what these people said.
And where is the reduction of harm? More people died under Joe Biden during the COVID pandemic than under Trump. We have expanding wars. We have no legislation that really addressing the needs of the working class. They couldn't even pass Build Back Better. Where is the harm reduction? 80 million people are either don't have insurance or underinsured in this country in terms of health. You know, people are record numbers are expanding in terms of homelessness, unhoused people. Where is the reduction? Okay, that's the issue they have. They keep on saying, "Oh, the economy is doing well," but the working class is like saying, "We don't feel it. We feel precarity. You know, we are living from hand to mouth. You know, we feel that we don't know what's going to happen next year. And you all say everything is fine, and we should be wanting more of the same." That's why they're going to end up losing, because they are existing in a parallel universe. Okay, and so the message is coming from the element of the Republicans saying, "Hey, why are we sending money to Ukraine when we can't take care of our own issues back in the U.S.?" They say, "We'll tell you why, because it's those globalists," and they name them. Okay, now we refer to the globalists as the neoliberals, but that kind of proto-fascist line is starting to take hold. Okay, now of course their program is objectively a fascist program, but the ruling class, the ruling neoliberals, they will compromise with that program if they have to, because they are pushing their own version of fascism. So if they can't smash the Trump movement, believe me, there'll be some kind of accommodation with it at some point, and the ones who will be left out will be us.
Well said. The last thing I want to show you guys today, speaking about fascism and neoliberalism, where we at. This is what I would define as late stage capitalism, the decline of empire. We have Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, saying that we can finance war, and we got millions of people struggling, unemployed, homeless, without health care. But Ajamu, we got investments that the capitalist class want to put in our society because we have a deeply serious central planning model in this country, where instead of addressing those issues, there are $1 billion supersized prisons that are being slated to be built across the United States. So as our society is crumbling, the capitalist overlords are investing in war and prison. Police states are being built with the blessings of people like Eric Adams in New York that crack down on homeless people. They're doing this to crack down on the dissent that they know is coming because they know neoliberalism and their current capitalist model has no justification. So, John, I'll give you the last word. I appreciate you for being generous. Any thoughts on the last few receipts I showed and any general statements about these super prisons and the direction our society is going in now?
Brother, you're all laying it out. I mean, that's the kind of information that people have to be exposed to, that it is a combination of militarism that they are committed to, and they said it quite clearly in their national security strategy. It's about global domination, and to sustain global domination, you have to have domestic support. So repression against those dissident elements is part of the project also. Criminalizing the poor people. So you have this investment taking place or slated to take place to expand the prison system. We talk about the fact that there's over 2 million people in prison and that there's a abolitionist movement, but it's quite clear that the ruling class don't give a fuck about abolition. They are committed to maintaining their hegemony, and they're not going to voluntarily give up on prisons and the police forces. So if you're not talking about defeating the capitalist state, then you bullshitting the people, okay?
Absolutely.
All right? I don't have no time for some of that abolitionist bullshit. So basically, it's about war. They understand they have to wage war, and they are waging war, and they are strengthening their ability to, in fact, do that effectively. Prisons, cop cities, the 1033 program, arming the police forces to the teeth. They are waging war and prepared to fight. But right now, it's a one-sided war. Our responsibility is to build the capacity for our people to resist and to shift power toward us, okay? And you can't do that any other way by being as upfront and honest with the people as we are today. If you're not about getting organized, preparing yourself, getting politically clear, and being prepared to fight for yourself and the generations that are coming, then basically step aside because basically you're not prepared for what's coming and what is already here.
Beautiful sentiments to end this program on. I'll just put up a few of the super chats that mentioned you by name. I appreciate the support. Justin said, Ajamu laying down the truth. Thankful for sharing his vision. Thanks for having Ajamu on. Always, it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure. This is another one I had on earlier. Nobody articulates uniparty U.S. fascism better than Ajamu. I think this is a fantastic show. I'll read the last few super chats, but I'm gonna let you go because I appreciate your time. Okay. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to plug and support? Only got just a few more chats to read here, but I'll let you go here. Any final thoughts?
I want to plug you all. Y'all keep on doing what you're doing. Y'all have made a significant presence in social media. People look to this channel for clarity and integrity. And that's what we have to do. It's the same thing. The reason people come to the Black Alliance for Peace. They know we ain't scared. We're trying to be clear. You know, we all make mistakes, but we are with the people. So that's all we can do, folks. And when we do this, we ensure that we're going to be in a place to really to make the kind of changes we have to make. We have no other choice. So thanks again for inviting me. And anytime you call, I'm here.
I appreciate your perspective. Appreciate your wise words. Make sure you guys follow Ajamu. We learned a lot from him and Black Alliance for Peace. Very amazing intellect come from that group. So let me read the last few super chats here. Big shout out to Zachary. So infuriating that I can't discuss Israel Palestine with my Jewish family without pissing them off. They don't want me posting stuff on Facebook unless it's pro-Israel, free Palestine. Big shout out to Zachary for standing for what is right, despite the pressures that come from his unfortunately brainwashed family. Take a lot of bravery. I can't relate to that because I talk to people who have like liberal family members. I have family members who vote Democrat, but they're not liberals. You know what I mean? They like do it out of civic duty. They just pick the lesser two evils. But when they was exposed to my politics, they wasn't like shocked. You know what I mean? They wasn't like, oh, Nick, you hate Democrats. No, I never had that tension. That's why I'm lucky in that sense. So big shout out to Zachary for standing up for what's right, despite having that pressure that come from your family. John was amazing. I see all the support for Ajamu in here. It's an honor to be in conversation with people like Ajamu. Absolutely. That's why it's always ridiculous when people say, "Oh, RBN is Jimmy Dore, Jason. This is Jason. This right wing." I'm like, bro, we learned from elders like Margaret Kimberly and Ajamu Baraka, Glenn Ford. These are the people we quote, but they can't say that. They can't say that. They can't tell the truth about us. Thank for 999 Janice. Betrayers, Black egalitarians will probably despise those of the community undermining their efforts in the interest of white supremacy. I'll never fully experience it, but definitely understand it. Another great comment from Janice, as always. And this is from Amir. Thank you for 499. I see YouTube strikes on channels that are pro-Palestinian, similar to how it was during the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Well said, Amir. I put this up earlier. Thank you for this, Marvin. George Washington, IRA, and Mandela were called terrorists. And they about to go after RBN soon, I'm sure. Put that up earlier. Thank you for that, Sean. Another one I put up. I think I'm through here. I think I got a few for Sean here. Let me read this. Thank you for $5. West is a paternalistic, bourgeoisie, liberal feigning humility, solidarity to undermine the proletariat. Thank you for $5. Another one for Sean as well. Psychology of colonialism is pernicious and unconscious. People who casually and reflectively justify the crimes against humanity because of lifelong indoctrination. Sean on fire here. Last one for DC. There is no foreseeable risk of inflation. That's a quote from Janet Yellen as Fed chair after the $6.4 trillion bailout from the CARES Act and HEROES Act. So she said there will be no risk of inflation. We all know how that prediction turned out to be. Anyway, thank you guys for the super chats. Hopefully you guys enjoy the show. It's always a blessing to have Ajamu on. On Wednesday, I will have Wyatt Reed on. So it's going to be a great show on Nick at Night on Wednesday. CJ is going to be live tonight with Post Duopoly show. So we got a double heavy-hitting show for you tonight. That's why CJ, he had other obligations. He wanted to join in to chat with Ajamu for a bit. So CJ will be back later today. I want to end with this video. Very powerful stuff. This is a Jewish influencer exposing what Zionism actually is. So I'm gonna send you off.
You want
on
me
this.
to support Israel?
Thank you guys for watching.
Israel? Fuck no, never, absolutely not. Ew, disgusting. Israel. We're talking about the same Israel. My Israel. It's my Israel, by the way. It's mine. I own it. You see, it's my birthright. For those of you who don't know, because I was born a Jewish man, I own the land of Palestine and Israel. It is my fucking blood right. That's not me saying that. That's the state of Israel, by the way. They told me. They told me, hey, man, because you're technically a Jew, Israel's yours. It's always been yours. Come on down. Come see the homeland. This isn't me being a dick. This is the state of Israel literally saying this to me. If you are a Jewish person, they offer you what's called birthright. Birthright. The opportunity to come to Israel for free on the Israeli dime and see Israel. It's a timeshare pitch. It's a fucking timeshare pitch. They want you to come see the city, dance in Tel Aviv, eat some kebabs, kick some Palestinians out of their homes, and then they'll try and get you to move there. And they'll do it like this pitch, like it's family, it's unity, it's an Israeli homeland. Nah, guys, it's an apartheid state. It's the greatest shame of the Jewish people. It's disgusting. You want me to condemn terrorists? Easy. I condemn the state of Israel and I condemn Hamas, the terrorist organization supported by the state of Israel. That was fucking easy. Hamas is a puppet of Israel, guys. It was founded by Israel. It was funded by Israel with the sole intention of destabilizing Palestine, because it's really fucking hard for your country to get its shit together when the one political party being funded by your fucking enemy is Islamic terrorists. All right. And that's literally the explicit strategy of the Israeli government. All right. So yeah, I denounce terrorism in all forms. I denounce the baby killers, the Israeli state who is bombing a city full of children right now. Gaza's mostly kids, guys. 65% of the population is under 24. Half of them are under 18. It is a fucking city of kids. Every time on CNN or MSNBC, every fucking shit show you're watching in order to see all these kids get killed, every time they list the dead Gazans, half of it's just kids. That's the fucking math. Half of it's just kids. You want me to condemn savagery and barbarism? Fucking easily. Who's the savages? Who's the savages? The people living in the